Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And since July is all about travel and my favorite destinations, this week we're going to talk about my favorite USA destinations on the East Coast. So let's go. Okay, so first I just want to say that I grew up in Texas and I've lived in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin. And then I've also lived in Denver, Colorado. So I'm not gonna talk about any of the places that I've lived as destinations, although they are pretty cool. And Austin and Denver specifically are really, popular places to visit. So they are not on my list. So I'm gonna talk about the other places I've been, but just wanted to get that out there before we get started. Because I think where you grow up kind of informs the places you've been and what you think might be cool. So the first trip that I want to share with you is one that my family, we still talk about because we all had so much fun. So it was me, my mom, my sister, and we decided to go to Boston and then rent a car and travel up through Maine. We visited Bar Harbor and Acadia National Park for a couple of days, and then we came back down and finished up in Boston. And we all just continue to talk about how much we loved Boston. Maine was really cool, and being from Texas, it was so opposite to anything we had really experienced, but we just had a really great time. And I would say that if you are traveling with family members, especially if you all kind of have different interest, which we all get along pretty well, but we do like to do different things, especially on vacation. One of the things we did, which I think worked really well, was we each got to pick one thing that we really wanted to do, and we built that into the schedule. So everyone kind of felt like they got to do the thing that they wanted to do, and then we all got to experience it together. So I think for me, it was Acadia National Park. So that was actually the whole reason we even went up to Maine. But we did, the historical thing in Boston, walking some of the trails that the founding fathers took. We visited the Red Sox stadium. We did a tour of that, and we met a friend. I had a friend living there at the time, so she took us out to a local restaurant and a place that she really enjoyed and kind of gave us some tips and things like that. So top of the list, that's definitely one, and we recommend it to a lot of people, is doing a Boston and Maine trip. And if you can't fit in Maine, don't worry. Boston itself as a city is really cool, but I definitely recommend heading up to Maine if you have an option, which I don't think is something that a lot of people think of. This was a super quick stop for me, which was Nashville, Tennessee, and I would very much like to go back and spend more time there. I was just there for to fly out after a work trip, so I was really only there for a night. But in that time, I was able to visit the state capitol building, drove through the Vanderbilt campus, which is, it's old, it's historical, it's really pretty. And also I visited a local brewery, which they have a lot of, and had some fun conversations with just random strangers while I was there, who were all very friendly. So yeah, Nashville, I think it's also kind of hitting the travel map a little bit more from maybe people who aren't as familiar with the US. It has a lot of live music that's kind of the home of country music, but it has a really good mix of different stuff. And I was really surprised. I mean, I had never seen it before, I'd never been there, and it definitely, the energy and the vibe of the city was definitely a place that I want to go back to. So Nashville is kind of just a quick stop on this list, but definitely worth stopping if you have the chance. A lot of these that I'm sharing are cities. They're places that people visit all the time anyway, but these are ones that I've been to and I loved for different reasons. So Washington, D.C., which is the nation's capital, so kind of a big deal, lots of visitors, is one that I visited in 2012 or 2013 for the first time. It was after I got back from living in London, and I was like, I can't believe I've never been to our nation's capital. So I had a friend living there at the time, and so I made a point to go another weekend trip, visit him, and see the city for the first time. And then I got to go back this year, 2020, pre-COVID, and do a house sit there and kind of got to re-experience it again. And there's just, for a country that's pretty young, it's just nice to be in places that have a lot of history. So there's just so much history in DC, the monuments, the museums. I feel like it just offers so much education. It's just a really interesting place to be. This last time I went, I did do a bike tour. Because I was house sitting, I think I probably explored less than I did on my weekend trip, but I also was able to drive down to Mount Vernon, George Washington's home, and I did it on President's Day. And so I got to do some like different cool things that, you know, I'd kind of done the first time. I went and saw all the monuments my first visit there, and so I didn't really make a point to do that this time. I tried to explore more of like the coffee culture and yeah, getting kind of outside DC city center. It's just a really cool place. You could spend weeks there and still not see everything in the museums and everything that it has to offer. So definitely recommend visiting DC if you have the chance. And last on my list, which is probably a pretty obvious one, but it is New York City. It is one of the places that is like the biggest draw to visiting the US. Like when you ask people traveling, like, oh, where in the US do you want to go first? And they either say New York City or LA. It's like, what are the others? And the only reason I'm putting this on my list is because I actually did not fall in love with New York City until my 5th visit, which is kind of crazy to me when I think about it. But you know, I went the first time and I was like, oh yeah, it was cool. My aunt and uncle took us, we had a lot of fun, but I never fell in love with it the way that I did, say, like London or even Austin the first time I visited. It was just sort of like a cool city that I enjoyed. And then I had some friends who lived there, so I would go up and visit them and they'd be like, Taylor, you should move here. And I'd be like, no, there's no part of me that wants to live in this place. But then I went back after a long break and after I'd been traveling internationally, went back to New York City last September in 2019. And I think I just saw this city from a completely different viewpoint. I mean, I was older, I was different, I had changed, but like the energy of the city. I also, for the first time, was not visiting in like December. So, and I like cold weather, but the city is very different in summer versus winter. So it's one thing to go and like see the Christmas trees and all the Christmas decorations, which are really cool and beautiful. But if that's the only way you've ever experienced New York City, I highly recommend going back maybe like late summer or early spring, because it's just really different. And that trip, my sister and I went together, and we had both been to New York multiple times, so we didn't do the touristy things. We did sort of the like second tier touristy things. We got a lot of recommendations from people who had lived there or been there multiple times, which I have a blog post on. I have a blog post about all the things you can do in New York City if you're a returning visitor. And so I think if you've been before and you were kind of on the fence, check it out again, because there is a lot to offer. I also have a video about one day in New York City as a digital nomad, where I go around and I show you different parts of the city, co-working to seeing a Broadway show to kind of everything I had going on that day. So that is it. Those are sort of my top USA destinations that I've visited personally and that I have enjoyed. So yeah, if you are in the US, road trip is always an option, but if you can only pick a few places, I hope that that kind of helps you, you know, think of some different options and maybe something you hadn't really considered before based on your interest. So thanks so much for being here, you guys. Be sure to subscribe, it really helps, and so you don't miss a video, because I am here every Tuesday, and I will see you next week.